Welcome once again to The Russell Brown Show. In this episode, I'm going to be interviewing Michael Shainblum, an incredible photographer, landscape photography, time-lapse photography, aerial photography. He's got more toys than anybody on the planet for really great photography. He gets to the right place just at the right time. He is an amazing photographer. I've known him for several years. Let's go ahead and call him up right now. Michael, are you there?
I'm here.
Wow. I've called you up today because I wanted people to know who you were and what you did, because I've been following you for years, but I just wanted everybody to have an appreciation for your work, and I think I wanted them to understand how hard you do work at what you do. Why don't we start with this image? What is it like to fly over the Golden Gate Bridge in a helicopter of that size?
Pretty spectacular. It's really an amazing experience. I mean, it's always fun going out and seeing the Golden Gate Bridge and going and photographing it, but to be able to see that kind of new perspective, flying right over the bridge, right over the traffic that I would normally be sitting in, is incredible. So this shot was done with my friend Toby Harriman, and of course you know Toby Harriman, talented
Yes.
aerial photographer.
Absolutely.
And it definitely gave me a fresh perspective on a place that I feel like I've photographed for so many years.
We're talking about the Golden Gate Bridge and aerial photography, ground photography, and fog. And that's what really interests me in the picture like this. And we both have taken shots here about 1 billion times, but This is quite nice. The shots about the Golden Gate Bridge, it's all about fog. How do you know to go across the bridge to catch this shot?
I've spent so many years trying to predict what's going to happen, and 50% of the time, maybe less, I get the shot that I'm looking for. I tried going up this hill, 5, 6, 7, maybe even 8 times, and every single time I got up the hill, I would be in the fog. And I would wake up at 5 a.m., drive over, hike up the hill, and I got, terrible conditions every single time. And this was actually the first time I had gotten up this specific hill and got above the fog. And this wasn't even sunrise, it was actually sunset. But it took me a lot of tries before I got this shot. But at the end of the day, I see fog, I get excited, I want to go for a hike, and then I just go take pictures.
I see your pictures, and I think he is a magician. He is always at the right place at the right time. But I think what really happens is you are persistent, and you just go more than anyone else goes out to capture these shots. Is that right?
The more time you're out there, the more chances you give yourself to get those better images and get those better conditions. So I have been lucky to get some really great conditions just by hanging out.
Luck and talent. Come now, luck and talent. Which brings me to this image that we need to chat about. This is a composite image, and I'm assuming this is a composite image. Is that right?
You could call it a time blend, a stacked photograph.
Okay.
So the tripod has been left in the same position.
Yes.
And I'm capturing a storm going across San Francisco for about, I can't quite remember, I think it was about 3 hours or so. Yeah. I had plastic over my cameras and set up 2 cameras with trigger remotes, time-lapse remotes, rain jackets on, and we were there at that spot for give or take about 5 hours.
To my studio audience, this is called youth. You have to be young and crazy to go out and do this. Okay, just a stunning shot. Let's move on to more Golden Gate Bridge. I must admit, I have this similar shot, but done with a drone 7 years ago, when it was, yes, those days, the wild, wild west of drones, I call them. You could go up to these locations and it was just a novelty. Oh, there's that kooky guy with a drone. I've always wanted to photograph this with my iPhone, and here comes the question. Here it comes. If I had photographed this with my telephoto lens from across the way, I would have added the starbursts, as we'll call them. But you never add anything to your photos. Is that, you are a purist, is that right?
Nothing was added that wasn't there, but this is a multiple, I'm using multiple exposures for this image. So
that's acceptable.
I actually had to do 2 shots for the the car streak, but they were going so slow down the hill that 30 seconds, they were only halfway through. So I had to click the shutter super quick once it ended to get the last part of that trail. All the lights are from the same exposure, but then you see there's a person and a car standing up top the hill.
Yes.
That is from a different exposure. I take a lot of artistic liberties, but I don't add things that weren't in that moment, if that makes sense, or in that experience. I'm pretty honest with all the things that I do to photographs. And if anyone ever has a question of, hey, is this a single exposure? Is this a blend? Is this a focus stack? I am more than willing to share all that information.
It's a storytelling. You're enhancing the story, and I will do this, but I will cheat. You don't cheat. You're using existing photos to combine that together. But I am Mr. I'll fake it every time.
And there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's just what I've set out for myself to do.
You're not only taking still shots, but you're a time-lapse expert. Oh my goodness. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys around the country, Michael Shainblum is the best at time-lapse. Holy moly. Look at this stuff. Look at this.
Thank you.
You have the patience. I have zero patience. I don't want to ask technical questions, but we're looking at hours, right? We're looking at hours going past, not minutes. Is that right?
A lot of the shots are pretty quick, 10-minute shots, 15, 20, sometimes 30.
Well, I'm watching the sun go down. I can get a certain sense of timing on this one. Mm-hmm. Making these clouds come to life is just the most stunning, surreal. It just really gives you that sense of the ocean, that these clouds aren't just water vapor. It's like an ocean moving liquid. Really, really gorgeous stuff.
Thank you.
I could watch this all day. This all day. You're capturing these, but I think I know that you are finessing this frame by frame. Is that true in Lightroom?
So yeah, I'm going through and doing the same things that I normally do to my photography, but with these time-lapse clips, I'm shooting all these images raw, and I have a lot of dynamic range to work with. Now, of course, I can't go into Photoshop and do focus stacking and stuff like that, but I still do process the images and give a little bit more life to the raw files. And yeah, the raw files give a ton to work with here. So I'm able to really bring out those colors and that dynamic range. You brought up something earlier about, you don't have the patience to do this. Funny enough, I'm a really impatient person.
Oh.
I know it doesn't seem like that by seeing time lapses. I'm really impatient for mostly things that I don't enjoy. So it's like, I could sit for hours and just watch nature happen and, watch sunset and clouds move over and little cars go through the fog. That to me, I don't need the patience for. It's amazing. But then I don't really have patience for sitting in traffic or sitting in long lines, stuff like that is unbearable.
Oh, tracking. You use some amazing, what do you call this sliding rig as you move the camera?
Motorized camera slider, or a motorized pan and tilt head, or a combination of the two, which would be 3-axis motion. It just adds another layer to the footage. Not all time lapses need this movement. I mean, some time lapses stand alone, static, they look great. If there's enough motion in the scene, you don't necessarily need something like this, but it adds another layer and it makes you really feel like you're traveling through the space. So I try and do some motion controlled shots for most of the videos that I put out.
We have to move on to my next category. My first category, I just love what you've done to the bridge. We both live in the Bay Area. We're both blessed to be able to go to the bridge. Mm-hmm. But the next thing that you have beaten everybody on the planet to are sunsets. I give it to you. Sunsets on the water.
Oh, thank you.
How do you find all of these sunsets? These don't happen every day. These clouds don't align perfectly every day. Is
Not
this
too often.
persistence? You just go out?
I've spent most of my time photographing the California coast, Oregon coast, a little bit in Washington, and I've also photographed the coast of, Faroe Islands, Iceland, New Zealand. But the bulk of my work and portfolio, as far as seascapes go, has been California. And seascape photography was one of my first genres of landscape photography that I got really invested in because, for me as a kid, the ocean and being at the beach was always sort of the place where I could relax and if I was having a bad day, go to the beach, watch the waves come in, the sea smell and the sounds of the waves always just calm me down. So it's been a huge part of my work for a long time now.
I know for a fact that you're shooting HDR. Am I correct on that? Obviously long exposure, but you're shooting multiple exposures and blending. Is that correct?
Well, cameras have gotten so good now that I could, a lot of these were taken with the old Canon 5D Mark II and other cameras that didn't really have the dynamic range to be able to shoot into the sun. Imagine, some of the images now with something like a Nikon D850, you could probably get pretty close, bring up the shadows and maybe have enough with one, maybe two exposures. But yeah, I was blending a lot of exposures together to get these images. And so I would just start really underexposed and start bringing that exposure up and then blend those images together using techniques called luminosity masking.
Luminosity.
Yeah. And I have a bunch of tutorials about that on my website.
Even with my iPhone, I will take multiple exposures and blend them together. I'll tap my finger on the sun and get one exposure and then the foreground. But you're doing some stunning things here with these shots that just blown me away. Another thing that caught my eye. And these next series of images are absolutely stunning. And how the heck is this rain in the distance in Death Valley? Is that what's going on here?
Yeah, this is rain pouring down the mountain. The sun came out and basked the sand dunes in this warm glow. And
did you speak with God before this took place or after? Oh my gosh.
Well, here's the thing. I was teaching a workshop before this. It was a 10 to 14 day workshop, something like that. And we got blue sky the entire time. And so we went to these sand dunes multiple times. It was blue sky. Now, of course, I love sand dunes even in blue sky, so that's okay. It's not a problem. But this day it happened a few days after, and we saw there was some dark clouds coming through, and I wanted to try and go to the sand dunes. I had no idea there was going to be backlit rain coming down the mountain and beautiful light on the dunes. That just you have to just go out.
I would have taken out footprints in the foreground, but I'm not going to ask if you did it. You're a purist. You wouldn't have taken out footprints, would you?
Would I take out footprints? I would, but well, it depends on how many, because it would be more of, do I really want to go? Like, is that worth the time of taking out a bunch of footprints, or am I going to find a composition that doesn't have footprints to begin with? But here's the thing about this too. It was a little windy, and if you have wind on the dunes, it's going to get rid of footprints really fast. If you have no wind, if there was no wind for days, this place would be tracked up.
I think I've proved to my studio audience that you really are quite an incredible photographer, and thus the reason why I have you here today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And would you ever allow me to go out with my iPhone and mobile phones and take photographs with you at any time?
Of course. Of course.
Someday. Okay, Michael Shainblum, goodbye from the Russell Brown Show. Thank you for tuning into this episode of The Russell Brown Show. If you want to watch more great interviews like this one or discover amazing tutorials, then be sure and go to russellbrown.com. You'll find all my latest content at that location.